Welcome into another episode of FFPC Insider Access here live on the Better Sports Network. We are celebrating Fantasy Football Night in America. My name is Eric Balkman. You can connect with me on the X at Eric Balkman. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, of course, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and the Fantasy Football Players Championship. Tonight, welcoming in high stakes royalty tonight. Not only can you hear this guy on the Fantasy Empire podcast, along with Matt Modica, Chris Vaccaro, and Dan Williamson on the Player Profiler Network. You check out everything he does over at ftnfantasy.com. He is the co-champion of the 2016 FFPC main event. You connect with him on X at _franchise12. Please welcome back onto these airwaves, Nelson Sousa. Nelson, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me again.
Double duty this week. You get the Fantasy Empire show, which I think is one of the best shows out there for high stakes players. And then you get to two hours. You got to put up with me for 2 hours tonight, which hopefully it'll be fun. But no, I think it's exciting to have you on because, and you've known this over the years too, people with skin in the game, people who are playing high stakes fantasy football, I do think that it's a different type of fantasy football. And you don't often get analysis for people who are playing in it. You've been to the mountaintop already, and you've been close many times before. So I always appreciate you having. I appreciate having you on. I think that the way that we play high stakes fantasy football, it's a little bit different than playing in a 12-team league with, a few $100 buy-in with your buddies or whatever. There's a lot of stuff to unpack. And I think the grind is real, and it's kind of getting tougher every year, isn't it?
It is. There's a lot of, I actually think there's a lot of good fantasy analysts out there that put out a lot of content, a lot of information. But it's like I tell my subscribers over at FTN or anyone that, follows me is, the advice I'm giving you is no different than what I'm doing for my own fantasy teams. Right. And, I'm heavily invested in those teams, putting up a lot of money every year. So I think that counts for something because it's not necessarily like an empty promise. If I'm telling you, hey, draft this guy, or, hey, it's between player X and Z, start this guy in your starting lineup. It's basically what I'm doing in my lineup. So, it doesn't just affect the person that I'm giving the advice to, it affects myself.
Do you feel, because I know I get a lot out of it, because whenever I watch/listen to Fantasy Empire, mostly listen because I'm more of an audio guy, I get 4 different perspectives from you, Chris, Matt, and Dan, which I appreciate. Do you ever feel like, you start living in your own echo chamber, and then when you do that show with 3 other guys with a ton of skin in the game, you're like kind of reevaluating? Like, it's difficult to do that sometimes because, you do your own evaluation on players, process and everything like that. But do you ever feel like, you sit down and you do that show for 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever, and then you're like, I got to reevaluate this guy, right? I got to reevaluate the way I think about this. Does that ever happen to you? Because I know it happens to me as a viewer.
What I'll say is I respect all those guys and I respect their opinions. And I think there's a lot of good fantasy shows out there, a lot of good podcasts that are being done by a lot of good people. But me personally, I don't listen to anyone else. I just do my own thing. And it's so that I don't get biased by anyone else's opinion. So I look at it as, it can be people can think of it as, it's a little close-minded, but I take in all the information that's out there, but I don't listen to a lot of shows for that reason, because I feel like once you start listening to too many shows, too many people, and different voices, it actually confuses you more than makes things clearer.
I think that there's something to be said for that too, because then you allow that noise to come in, and then it kind of muddles the way that you analyze and process. So there's something to be said for that. I do want to give a shout out to you. Thanks to our mutual friend, Steven Yergalos, the fantasy soprano himself. I'm supposed to wish you a happy birthday because you just turned the ripe old age of 25 this week. Happy birthday, Nelson.
That's right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Have you teamed up with Steve at all this year on high stakes teams?
Yeah, we actually did a team together, FFPC main event, and it's doing pretty well right now. It's in first place.
Good. That's good to hear. And by the way, Mile High Stella will lead things off tonight. I'll tell you what's coming up on the show in a little bit, viewers out there. But Mile High Stella wants to know Tyrone Tracy or RJ Harvey tonight. This is a fun one because he's got to make the decision tonight with the Broncos hosting the Raiders. RJ Harvey at home, obviously against the Raiders. And then you look at Tyrone Tracy, who goes to Chicago. Nelson, if this was something you were faced this week, would you play Harvey tonight or would you sit and wait and then play Tracy on Sunday?
Yeah, I think Tracy's got a good matchup also, but I'm all in on the Broncos tonight. So I would lean going Harvey.
More on the Broncos coming up later on in our Thursday night football preview. We're going to go around the NFL here to kick things off. We'll talk about the trade deadline, the fallout from that, the Kyler Murray benching. We'll get into some New England stuff regarding TreVeyon Henderson and Kayshon Boutte. Plus, tonight in our Broncos Raiders preview, we're going to talk about Bo Nix. We're going to talk about J.K. Dobbins. We'll talk about some of these other wide receivers on Denver, not named Cortland Sutton. And then we'll get into the matrix here. We'll get into the nebula with Ashton Jeanty, with Jack Besh, stuff like that, before we kick things off tonight in about an hour or so, live in Denver for Thursday night football. And then Nelson's going to give his assist on some starter sits tonight, including but not limited to Josh Downs, Rachaad White, David Njoku, and Michael Penix. That will be our show, and we'll probably broadcast all the way up to the first few minutes of the second quarter, so you can have your two-screen experience going on tonight. Also want to remind everybody that there is, like I said, about 65 minutes left in the FFPC Thursday weekly challenge. No draft, no salary cap, just pick 10 or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses or not. Win up to $2,500, 10, 30, and 100 team contests available now. Only one player per team. So if you want Bo Nix, you can't have RJ Harvey. If you want Jack Besh, you can't have Brock Bowers. I don't know who would want to do that, but you never know. One player per NFL team. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. MyFFPC.com. Shout out to our producer, Sean Engel, tonight. But let's go to Boppo TV. Question on Twitch right now, Nelson. Should I start Troy Franklin tonight or just keep Jennings and Alec Pierce for Sunday? I'm assuming he's referring to Juwan Jennings, or maybe Terrell Jennings. I hope it's Juwan Jennings that he's referring to here. Yeah. We'll get into Troy Franklin a little bit. I happen to be pretty bullish on him this evening. So would you start Franklin over both Juwan Jennings and Alec Pierce in Week 10, my friend?
I would. Just before coming on the show, I had to set my lineups for tonight's game, and I've got quite a bit of Franklin going, and it's a little scary, the amount, just because he's my highest owned wide receiver on my team. So, but some lineups are, out of, just because of the bye weeks and everything, he's forced into lineups. And then I just think that he's the better play over some wide receivers and running backs. So I like him tonight.
I'm going to tell you why I like Franklin coming up a little bit later on in the show, but I'm with a Nelson on this one, Boppo, that you play Franklin tonight for sure. Okay, let's get into what happened with the trade deadline on Tuesday. Fun stuff here, and we'll lead things off with Jakobi Meyers. Now, Meyers ends up going from Las Vegas, as he wanted to get out of there, apparently, from everything we've heard over the last month and a half, that he ends up going to Jacksonville, of all places. Ryan O'Halloran, who covers the Jaguars for the Florida Times-Union, believes that Jakobi Meyers is, quote, not just a rental for the Jaguars. Now, they did give up a 4th and a 6th round pick at the trade deadline. And the quote from O'Halloran in the Florida Times-Union, they feel like they're going to keep Jakobi Meyers here after this season, probably not even let him hit the market. And O'Halloran believes that he is the number 1 receiver ahead of Parker Washington, at least as long as Hunter and Brian Thomas are out, as they're dealing with injuries. So several things to unpack here. Let's talk about just initially Week 10. When you think about Jakobi Meyers, Nelson, allegedly there's going to be a package of plays for him this week. What's your level of confidence in starting and maybe flexing out is the better way to term it? What's your level of confidence in flexing out Jakobi Meyers in his first game as a Jaguar this Sunday?
I think it just depends on the calls that you have. I definitely think he's going to play if Brian Thomas is out, which it's looking like. But Dyami Brown looks like he practiced in full, and he could be clearing concussion protocol. So he could be out there, and I could see a situation where it's a short week. He's probably going to play limited snaps. I don't think he's going to play full snaps out there. He doesn't have a rapport just yet with Lawrence. So, I wouldn't be in a rush to throw him out there in lineups if I have, decent options that I can kind of predict or feel like they're safer than him.
Long term, I guess like this is more of a dynasty question. I know you're not super involved in dynasty as much as you are in redraft, but when you think about the Jaguars going forward, if this is true that they want to keep him long term, what does this mean for guys like Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas, two guys on rookie contracts for the next couple of years, next several years, really? What does that mean for Meyers and those three guys? Good news for Trevor Lawrence, but I'm not sure how to feel about all three of these guys now.
Well, I mean, to me, my opinion is I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a very good quarterback, and I don't know about him long-term supporting more than one wide receiver. He has a hard time just supporting one guy and throwing accurately. It just seems like every ball he throws is going 90 miles an hour, and there's no touch, no nothing to it. So I wouldn't be very bullish with owning Jaguars wide receivers in dynasty right now.
For this week, and I'll bring this up right now. Apparently, a lot of the reporting, a lot of the rumors, a lot of the insight into this is that Jakobi Meyers is going to be playing the X, which would leave Parker Washington for a lot of slot snaps, which is good. Do you think that we still can squeeze out another good fantasy week out of Parker Washington when they travel to Houston to take on the Texans?
Yeah, that's the guy that I'm most comfortable putting in my lineups, but Houston's very stingy. They've been very good against the pass, and they've been solid against the run. So, but Parker Washington being in the slot, I think he avoids their top corners, and Lawrence has a rapport with him. We saw it last week. That's the guy he likes to target over the middle. So I would feel comfortable playing Washington if you have to.
There's a few leagues where and I'm not proud of this, but I do have to play Parker Washington in a couple. And I feel okay. Like I still think he doesn't necessarily need he's not relying on the big play, right? You're relying on volume with him. You're relying on, him getting 8 to 10 targets. And if he churns out 10, 11 fantasy points, I'm good with that against the Houston Texans in my flex spot this week. Now, one of the other big trades that went down this week, at least as far as fantasy purposes go, Nelson, was Rashid Shaheed being reunited with his old OC, Clint Kubiak, in Seattle. Shaheed also said, this according to Greg Bell, he views Seattle as his long-term home and that he is, quote, here to stay. So a contract extension will have to be signed by both the Seahawks and Shaheed if this is what's going to happen. He's 27 years old, coming off his rookie contract, but they gave up a couple of picks, 4th and 5th round to get him. Obviously, we have seen not a ton from Cooper Kupp this year, and now he's hurt with both heel and hamstring injuries. Torrey Horton, it kind of sucks because he had that great game this past week in week 9, and now you got Rashid Shaheed to contend with. So let's talk initially here. I like Shaheed this week, Nelson. He knows this offense. He played in this offense in New Orleans, or at least a very close facsimile to this offense. So I still like him in week 10. And quite frankly, the way Sam Darnold's playing right now, Shaheed is going to be a guy I seriously look at as an every week flex when I go to set my lineups through the end of the season based on what I've seen from Darnold and what I think I'm going to see from Shaheed here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was an interesting trade because Horton, the rookie, just was coming off a huge game, and he looked really good. And knowing that they want to run the ball also and stay pretty balanced. They're going for it, and they wanted to open up the offense a little bit and probably the run game. So with that speed element on the outside, I think it keeps defenses honest from stacking the box. And I think that, it also helps JSN, not that he needed any help. But I think it also helps him to be able to play, middle of the field a little more now that you got Shaheed and you got the Horton kid, and then eventually Cup. I thought maybe that the Cup injury was a little more serious than what they were letting on, and that's why they made the trade. But it sounds like he was like limited in practice this week so far, so probably not too serious.
Yeah, he was limited. I don't know if he practiced yesterday, but he did get a limited practice in today. When you consider, I mean, it's really tough to make a case to roster, through fantasy football, regardless of if you have these guys on the same team or not. Smith and Jigba, Shaheed, Cup, Horton. I think Cup and Horton are the two most expendable players. And Horton, like I said, 4 targets. He catches all of them for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Commanders. When you think about Cup versus Horton, who would you rather keep on your high-stakes teams right now going forward? Is it the guy, the former offensive player of the year in Cup, who's obviously getting up there in age and dealing with some injuries, or is it Torrey Horton, the rookie, who seems to have his trajectory going in the opposite direction of Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, so for me, like my mentality is when I'm deciding between like these fringe guys and the young guy that, has shown like a lot of upside, I'm always going to side with the younger guy, with the upside. Kupp at this stage in his career is kind of, he is what he is. You're not really going to get big games out of him. Whereas like Horton is the type of guy that you saw on Sunday, that he's capable of that 20-point game.
I think the other thing too, and I always say this too, Nelson, all the time, the NFL, especially at the running back position, but I think by and large through most positions, it's a young man's game. And so it's really, really difficult for me to break ties in favor of the older guy. By and large, I'm with you. I always go with the younger guy, not only because of that spike ability, but you never know how talented these guys are. Maybe Horton has this massive second half of the season. I don't think Kupp is going to have that. So I'd much rather bet on youth than experience here when it comes to this. Shaheed now from New Orleans to Seattle. Let's talk about the New Orleans aspect of this. Obviously, Chris Olave is going to see more targets. Olave is a guy that I think has been very, very good for anybody who drafted him where you got him in fantasy leagues this year. I don't think we need to talk about him a whole lot, but I do want to talk about Juwan Johnson because he is a guy that really turned it on at the start of the season. Was unbelievable in the few leagues, in tight end premium leagues like the FFPC, where he wasn't drafted. He was snatched up pretty quickly. In their loss to the Rams this past week, he gets in the end zone, 4 targets. He catches 3 of them for 31 yards. I know they don't run the same routes. They serve different purposes in that Saints offense between Shaheed and Juwan Johnson. But the targets have to go somewhere, Nelson. Do you see significantly more targets going to Juwan Johnson now that Shaheed is playing in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, because I don't think it's a simple, okay, the wide receiver that steps up now in Shaheed's role takes the vacated targets, because I don't think very highly of Vele and Tipton. I believe those are the 2 receivers that are like next man up. And then Brandon Cooks, I think he's, I think he's washed. So yep. I look at it as, they're going to be playing from behind most games. So I expect the targets to go to Olave and Jauan. Like those are the 2 obvious guys.
So there's no, and I looked at this, and I looked on Fantasy Mojo today briefly. I didn't get into it a whole lot, but I didn't see a whole lot of Cooks being picked up, and I was surprised. I didn't see a whole lot of Vele either. New Orleans gave up, I believe, a 4th round pick to Denver to pick up Vele. So I thought that there's something there. And if there is not something
there, fantasy players are getting smarter, Eric.
Yeah, well, the fantasy players are getting smarter, but apparently the front office guys are not. So I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something there for Vele. Strictly from the fact that New Orleans thinks that there's something there for Vele. You bring up Mason Tipton as well, but I guess the gist of this and the moral of the story is Olave good, Juwan Johnson good. Everybody else in New Orleans probably bad as far as the wide receivers and tight ends go.
Listen, they might prove me. He might prove me wrong, but that was a head scratcher when I saw New Orleans what they gave up to get Vele. It didn't make sense, and he hasn't had a role all year. So I don't get the trade, and I still don't, value him where I wanted to pick him up. He wasn't a target of mine this week.
Mile High Stello on YouTube chiming in. Juwan Johnson and Mason Taylor seem like they have a killer playoff schedule, and also the path to opportunity is there for both. I just looked up Juwan Johnson's this week. He goes to Carolina. Then he gets the Falcons at home. He goes to Miami the week after that, goes to Tampa in early December, followed by another game against Carolina in New Orleans. They stay in the Big Easy to take on the Jets, who now do not have Sauce Gardner or Quentin Williams. They go to Tennessee for week 17 as well. So I think that is a pretty good schedule for Juwan Johnson. Perhaps the one thing working against them, Nelson, they could be involved in very tight games in all those, and it may discourage passing because maybe we'll see more Kamara and Devin Neal in those games. I don't know. But it looks on the surface for Juwan Johnson, Atlanta, Miami, Tampa, Carolina, the Jets, and then Tennessee, it looks fairly juicy for Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, I think Juwan, I actually thought that we were going to see the last of Juwan once Taysom Hill got back. Right. And it was kind of be like, all right, he had a good run. Now he's going to take a back seat and everything. But he might have like his second win here in the second half of the season with Shaheed gone. And I mean, Tyler Shuck is not good. And I usually tend to lean on usually young quarterbacks that are not very good. They don't like throwing outside the numbers. The game's moving too fast for them, and they tend to target, inside the numbers, and it's usually like a tight end. So I think Juwan's probably going to be, I'd probably put him right now as he's a top 12. He's like low end tight end 1, I think.
Okay. And I could see that too. I think we're going to learn a lot this Sunday when they take on Carolina. This will be the first game without Shaheed. And this will be the second start, but the third significant game for Tyler Shook, and see if he can make any kind of advances on his play as well. What a game it was in Cincinnati last week with the Bears and the Bengals. Career days for Colston Loveland. We'll get into him in a little bit. Career day for Kyle Monangai. Caleb Williams was unbelievable as well. I want to talk about DeAndre Swift versus Monangai. Now, both of these guys dealing with injuries heading into week 10, and I believe they both got in full practices today. DeAndre Swift was dealing with this groin injury that the Bears decided to keep him out last week to get him fully healthy, and he did get into full practice today. What's frustrating about this is Monangai is coming off a 3-catch, 198 total scrimmage yard performance with Swift out. So now you look at this week, Nelson, it's like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Are we playing Swift? Are we playing Monangai? Are we playing neither one of them? It's not neither one of them. I think you gotta play one of them. Yeah. So Monangai, this is a game that the Bears are playing at home against the Giants. Total is like 48.5, 49, somewhere around there. Not saying that you have Monangai and Swift on the same team, but let's say you have them on separate teams, right? Are they both playable this week? Do you view Monangai and Swift both as maybe low end, top 25 running backs or maybe flexes this week in FFPC leagues?
I do. It's a great matchup, against the Giants, right? And Swift is going to go right back into his role. I don't think it's a situation where after 1 week, especially against the Bengals, that we see like a Rico Dowdle Chuba situation where it was obvious that Rico was just outperforming Chuba. Swift, before he was banged up and before he missed last week, he was getting it done. Like he was playing well and he was putting up stats for fantasy. So I think just going off of that one game from Monangai, I don't think you can just go ahead and play him over Swift if you've got both. I think you just got to go back to Swift if the choice is just one, maybe for a flex or RB2, you're good at the other flex positions or whatever. I think you go Swift.
Would you play? Trying to think of a good example here. Rachaad White or Kyle Monangai this week? Rachaad White, who's at home against your Patriots, actually.
I play Monangai, and the reason why it might sound or seem weird, but just because Rachaad White, has been the number one since Bucky got hurt, but lately before the bye, he was starting to taper off. Like he wasn't looking all that good running the ball, and New England is very good against the running back. They basically shut down every running back that they face, unless they're like Bijan and they're elite in the passing game, which White is very good, but he's no Bijan. So I believe the Patriots, there's some stat out there that they haven't allowed a 50-yard rusher so far this year. Wow. So what are we really expecting from White? So I actually think Monangai would be the play there.
Would you play Monangai over Kamani Vidal at home against the Steelers?
No, I would play Vidal.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to Sean Ram's question here from YouTube. He's got two of them. So number one, this is full PPR. He's got a decision here. He can either play Chris Olave at Carolina this week, or he can play Ashton Jeanty tonight, who is in Denver. And we'll get into the Jeanty conversation. I have some thoughts on this. I still think, though it's full PPR, I'm still going to play Jeanty here. Nelson, how do you fall in on this?
He's your first round pick or early second round pick, right? And he has shown this year that he's capable of big games. And I actually think that Denver can be had a little bit, versus the running back. So I'm just playing Jeanty. I'm not. It's got to be. Olave's been solid, but it's got to be an elite wide receiver if I'm going to sit Jeanty.
The second part of his question here, this is a different league. Rome Odunze or Zay Flowers is a decision he's mulling over right now. Odunze this week is taking on the New York Giants. Talked a lot about that game so far. Odunze is taking on the New York Giants. That is in or at Soldier Field. And then Zay Flowers goes on the road to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Odunze dealing with that heel issue right now. He did get a limited practice in today. I guess I lean more towards the healthy guy here in Zay Flowers. I think that there's a potential for a shootout type game in Minnesota between the Ravens and the Vikings. So I say Flowers over Odunze here. Which way are you leaning, Nelson?
I agree with that. You can tell that the last few weeks that Rome's battling that heel issue. He hasn't been the same. He's not putting up any production. Caleb's not really looking his way. So I would go Zay Flowers this week.
So there you go. Hopefully that helps Sean go with God on those decisions. We're talking a lot about this Bears-Giants game. Let's continue it because we saw a pretty big game from Colston Loveland this past week. Cole Kmet was part of that because he ends up missing a good chunk of that Bengals game, which led to a huge day from Colston Loveland. However, Cole Kmet got in a full practice today, and it seems like he's going to be cleared and he's going to be able to play despite having this concussion on Sunday. What does this do? Not necessarily that you want to play Cole Kmet in this matchup, but Nelson, if Kmet is active, how does that change the way that you look at Colston Loveland in tight end premium leagues this week?
So I've got a bunch of Colston Loveland, and I feel like I got a little bit unlucky, and I wish I was a little bit luckier because last week I had him in lineups, and then once Kmet was deemed active and was going to play, I took him out of a majority of my lineups on Sunday morning. And it's like after the game, I'm like, I just want to get lucky one time. Like if I didn't overanalyze my teams and I just set them Saturday night and went out somewhere Sunday morning and didn't pay attention to football, I would have gotten lucky and had those points in my lineup. So the point that I'm trying to make is that with Kmet active, it's just so hard to know how much Loveland's going to get used because they continue to kind of split and Loveland's not like the main guy. But I feel a little bit better about using Loveland this week, even with Kmet, only because Odunze obviously is banged up. And I just think that they've got to be able to move the ball, and they're going to run the ball. But I think Loveland coming off that game, that could give the coaches a little more confidence that, hey, it's time to turn it on. He was our first round draft pick. Let's get him going now.
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? The Bears coaches saw it. Everybody saw it. Everybody knows what Loveland's capable of. Now, this was against the Bengals, who may be the worst defense in the NFL in giving up fantasy points to opposing tight ends. But still, there is something to be said for this big breakout that we saw from Loveland, and everybody saw it at this point. So I'm still like, I have a few Kelsey Loveland teams, and obviously it makes it easy for me because Kelsey's on a bye. I can easily put in Loveland, and I feel pretty good about it going forward here. We have to ask Timberho 3935 on YouTube their question: who should they start full PPR? Chris Olave and Troy Franklin tonight. I think both of these guys are good starts this week. I like both of them, but if I can only play one, Nelson, I'm going to check down to Chris Olave. I'm going to play him over Troy Franklin.
Yeah, I'm going to play Olave.
Okay, there you go. Olave is the play there. Interesting news coming out of Arizona, and I think we can put our tinfoil hats on. We'll get our conspiracy theorist minds right. Adam Schefter reporting that Kyler Murray has now been placed on injured reserve with a foot injury. Schefter said that this will give the Cardinals, the Cardinals are telling Schefter that this will give, quote, Murray the chance to focus on rehabbing his foot injury and that he is committed to getting back as soon as possible. Now, the soonest he can come back is not till week 14 because he's going to miss a minimum of 4 games on injured reserve. And whether there is a need for a quarterback the way Jakobi Brissett is playing right now, I don't know. I think that Adam Levitan was actually talking about this from Established to Run, and he said he felt so smart when he was not drafting Marvin Harrison, and now he feels like an idiot because Jakobi Brissett has made Marvin Harrison and, quite frankly, Trey McBride look really, really good. Jonathan Gannon said, I think prior to placing Murray on injured reserve, when he made the announcement that Brissett was going to start at quarterback against Seattle this week, he said he really liked the way the offense was playing right now. And we have eyes. We can see it. We love, as fantasy owners, the way that this Arizona offense is playing right now with Brissett rather than Murray. I think this is good news for the Cardinals pass catchers. Certainly, I mean, I don't know if Michael Wilson or Zay Jones all of a sudden become startable unless you're really desperate. But I feel really good about Harrison. I feel really good about McBride. And Nelson, I wonder if there's something to be said for like, hey, Brissett's playing really well right now. Let's just put Kyler Murray on injured reserve. There's no quarterback controversy that way. And we could just roll out Brissett these next 4 weeks and see how well we can do as we try to make a playoff push. I think there's more to this than meets the eye. I don't know how you think about it.
Yeah, Kyler, I put him up there with Trevor Lawrence as former number 1 picks that are just quarterbacks that I don't think are long for the NFL as starters. I just don't think they're very good. I don't think they have good vision. They don't have a good feel for the game. So it made sense to me that after watching Brissett play that you just got to go with him at this point because the offense is clicking. And then from a fantasy perspective, and for real life, like Marvin Harrison is a talented wide receiver. Okay. He's a guy that you took like 4th overall, but after a couple of years, that doesn't matter anymore, right? Where a guy it matters production, right? But it's now you're starting to see that it's obvious that his lack of production and everything had something to do with Kyler also. I'm not a fan of the offensive coordinator in Arizona, but I definitely think that it was a situation where if it was that serious with the injury, which I guess it could be, they would have put him on IR right away. Why did they wait a couple of weeks, see if things get better and whatever? What that was, okay, we don't know what the heck to expect from Brissett. He could be totally washed. This offense could look like even more of a shit show than with Kyler. And we're just going to force Kyler back in there if we're getting an ugly product out there on the field. And then once Brissett and, the team kind of rallying around him, I think that's when they made the decision. Okay, Kyler, you're going to go out to pasture. Go rest.
And now we'll see what happens in the offseason. I mean, it's not going to be an easy contract to move if they want to go that way, but anything's possible in the NFL for sure. Steve G on YouTube. Hopefully, Kyler Murray never comes back. He's going to come back somewhere, whether that's in Arizona or not. It remains to be seen.
What's great? The one issue, Eric, with McBride was, okay, he gets a ton of volume, but he's not catching touchdowns. Why isn't he targeted in the red zone? Why isn't he catching more touchdowns? Well, now with Brissett, that's happening, right? And with Marvin, I have quite a bit of Harrison. So I feel the opposite of Adam, where I felt like an idiot to start the year with Harrison not performing well. And now Now I don't feel like a genius, but it's more of a sense of a relief.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. And I think that, well, let me ask you this, Nelson. Do you think height, how big of a role does Kyler Murray's height play into this? Do you think that's part of the reason why he's not very good?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Okay.
I think that's part of it. I don't know if this is controversial, but I think that's part of it why Bryce Young, I don't think, is really going to ever make it in the NFL also. And why I think that, is going to end up looking like a bad pick.
Yeah, it's certainly, I know what Carolina's trying to do there, but it's not, I go back and forth on Bryce Young where he makes these really good plays and then just does something that just baffles me for a guy who's got as much experience in the NFL as he does to make plays like that. It's just, I don't get it. And I think when I see that from players, I think I'm more likely to, like you, to say, hey, I don't know if this guy is it. I don't know if he has it. And maybe he's just got career backup written all over him. Let's see here. What else do we? Axes on Twitch right now wants to know Bo Nix or Caleb Williams. This is a tough one because I like both of these guys this week, Nelson. Obviously, Nix hosting the Raiders tonight. Caleb Williams in that Bears-Giants game. We keep talking about it. That's at Soldier Field. I don't know, man. I think I lean Nix because of the matchup, but Caleb Williams was so good last week. I know it was against the Bengals, but he's another pedigreed guy. And maybe this gets into the conversation of how good do you think Caleb Williams is as well?
Yeah, I don't have a very good opinion of Caleb. My issue with Caleb is if you watch him drop back, and the Ben Johnson offense needs to be in rhythm, on time, quick release, find the receiver and get rid of the ball. And every time Caleb drops back, you just want, like, it never leaves his hands quickly. He's patting the ball, looking, and then he scrambles. And then he makes plays because he's talented. But there's something there that's not clicking. Like, I just don't think that, like, he has very good vision right now. Like, I don't think he's seeing the field very well because, like, with Jared Goff in Detroit, that was something like you saw it. Like, the ball's out of his hands. It's quick. Mm-hmm. It's moving. It's flowing. With the Bears offense, like, if you really watch it, it doesn't flow. Like, it's Caleb, holding the ball too long. He's running around. He's scrambling. Like, the one play that he made that I thought was good, and it was a good read, was on the Loveland play at the end of the game where he dropped back and on his back step, boom, release right onto Loveland. And then obviously, they didn't tackle him, but it was out of his hands quick. That's what I'm saying is, like, for most quarterbacks in offense, that's what you want to see is there's a little more flow and rhythm to it. And with Caleb, I'm not seeing it. But the long answer is I'm going Bo Nix tonight.
Yeah, I would too. Just to follow up this Caleb Williams discussion, is there something to be said for knowing how his career started off last year with Shane Waldron and then another OC at the end of the season, and now you have Ben Johnson implementing an offense, which I perceive to be somewhat complicated. We heard from a lot of pundits in the offseason that this was not going to be something where it immediately is just clicking for Caleb Williams and the Bears offense. It was going to be a process. Is there something to be said for like, hey, maybe once November, late November, early December rolls around, we really see Caleb Williams, playing some really good football with this new offense. I feel like, he's a pedigreed guy, former number 1 overall pick. We should hold him to a higher standard, right? But I still think at the same time, we have to understand the changes and everything he's been going through here too. And I want to allow for that to be part of the process where he might look bad now, but then the light switch could just turn on too. I want to allow for that as at least for a range of possibilities.
Yeah. So what I'll say is this. Okay. Was there an offensive coordinator change in New England with Drake May?
Yes.
There was, right? Okay. Is the Josh McDaniels offense complicated?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Okay. Who's got more talent? Who's surrounded by more talent, Caleb or Drake? At the beginning of the season,
Williams, 100%.
Okay. So I look at it as like it's clicking and happening for Drake, and I'm not giving up on Caleb because I think he's very talented. But that's what I'm saying is that's missing from him is that vision and that sense of, okay, my receiver's running this route and I'm getting rid of the ball, on time. I don't need to be, sitting here in the pocket. Like he's got a ton of time. Like the offensive line is playing well. He's scrambling because he's not on time with his throws. So I look at it as, they came out of the same draft, right? So Caleb was 1, Drake was 3, and I see like a big difference between the two of them right now.
I think that's an interesting argument. Like, I think the argument there is like, hey, we can see it more with Drake May than we can at Caleb Williams at this point. But to your point, Nelson, I'm with you on everything you said. And I'm also with you. One of the other things you said, I'm not giving up on Caleb Williams yet. But Drake May is certainly very, very intriguing what he's been able to do so far in his young career, despite, a lot of the similar adversity that was, or maybe even more adversity that was facing him rather than Caleb Williams. By the way, hi, Mr. Bakes a lot. We appreciate you chiming in tonight. Steve Yergalos also pointed this out, Nelson. The Cowboys are on bye this week. And I don't want to give you short shrift, but Steve said that he was the genius play this year for people drafting. And he said Nelson Sousa was the only guy that he saw that said Javonte Williams was the breakout. I'll be honest with you. Well, Nelson, you listen, you've forgotten more about fantasy football than I know, but I want to bring this up too. For anybody out there like me who was not targeting Javonte Williams, I only have him in a few leagues where I should have had him in a bunch. What did you see specifically about Williams during draft season this year that you're like, hey, this is a guy you want to be in business with because he's going to win a lot of people a lot of money this year?
I think a lot of people have lock take and they just kind of either get stubborn or they worry too much about what happened last year and not what's going to happen this year. So like an example, like the last couple of years, Javonte's been a fade for me, like no interest in him. And it was partly to do of him coming off his serious injury and him not looking like himself from his rookie year. And I felt like he's another year removed from the injury. There was spurts where last year he actually looked kind of decent, but not 100% all the way. And then when I'm looking at it just it was more of a logical standpoint. I was just like, okay, somebody's got to play running back for the Cowboys. Okay. And when I look at this offense and I look at Dak with CD and Pickens on the outside, and they got Ferguson, and I actually think that the defense is not that good. And that was with Micah Parsons, still with the Cowboys.
Yep.
Okay. I still didn't think much of the defense. So like I looked at it and I'm like, okay, Javonte can catch the ball, okay, because he's had a couple of years of like what is it, like 50 catches, right around there.
Yeah.
In that range, 45, 55. So he can catch the ball. He's a bigger back, physical. When they get at the goal line, he's going to be the goal line back. I felt like Blue is kind of small and not really. Like when I evaluate these rookies, I look at it and I didn't think that highly of him this year. So put it all together, I'm just like, okay, this dude's going in like the 9th round of drafts, and he could be a legit starting running back, and there's nobody there behind him. That's how I felt. So I just looked at it as like it was a no-brainer to just take him in the 9th round. I've done worse with 9th round picks.
Right. That's the other thing too. The draft capital you had to invest, it wasn't significant. Were you down on Jaden Blue then?
I was. Yeah, I didn't have I wasn't really a fan of his. And I also thought that like he is like on the smaller side, and I think he hasn't really gotten like his a fair opportunity. But I think him being inactive last week kind of so he was inactive to start the year, right? And Miles Sanders, okay, we're talking about Miles Sanders was playing ahead of Blue. So that kind of should have told you, something. But NFL coaches with rookies, sometimes, these guys take a little while to come on the scene. But last week, him being inactive and Malik Davis is a freaking backup to Javonte, and now they release him. That kind of, I think that tells you like what the coaching staff thinks of him.
Are you on board with, I heard I think it was John Daigle talking about this week. Are you on board with like trying to lock up Phil Maffa as an injury away type guy?
Yeah.
He's on injury reserve right now. Is there anything there?
So early in the summer and during the draft season, I actually was drafting Maffa because I figured like he could potentially be like the backup. And while, I felt pretty strongly about Javonte, you don't know how like these backfields might shake out. So like he was the guy I was interested over Blue and Sanders. So there might be something there. Like he might be coming off IR, and he could be the handcuff to Javonte.
Yeah. I think like we're going to get the buys behind us here. We're coming up on week 10. There's one, I think week 13, we got nobody on buy. I think there's a 1 week where there's only 2 teams on buy as well. So that there could be an opportunity to stash Maffa on a few of your teams for anybody who's looking for an extra injury away type running back. Okay. I want to get into CJ Stroud, and not necessarily for Stroud purposes, but for Texans pass catching purposes. Adam Schefter posted this yesterday. And I think it's interesting that this was an early rule out, that this like Stroud, because of his concussion, already ruled out for week 10, and maybe week 11 is going to be around the corner here. DeMeco Ryans saying that Stroud is going to miss this week's game against the Jaguars. Davis Mills and his 8-foot giraffe neck are going to start in Stroud's place. What do you make of players? I mean, obviously, if you have Nico Collins, you got to play him. But what about some of these other fringe guys? Dalton Schultz, Christian Kirk, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, some of these other guys. And I'll say this too, like Higgins and Noel, I thought they'd be playing more than they actually have been. The Texans are giving a lot of snaps to these other guys that I don't understand it. So knowing that Davis Mills is going to be the quarterback this week against Jacksonville, besides Collins, Nelson, is there anybody that we need to know about?
Yeah, so I will say this, Eric. Mills can see over the offensive line, unlike Kyler, okay, because of his neck.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
So I don't think Mills is that bad of a backup quarterback. So I think that they can operate the offense as long as they don't become too conservative and try to run Chubb up the middle. Like Chubb's washed. Like he's done. Woody should probably be playing more. And I actually think with their pass catchers, they should open up the offense. Like that's right now, that's how the offense is built. It's not built to run the ball. So, but it seems like that's what these coaches want to do. They're super conservative. But I would say like I am disappointed that Jaden Higgins and Noel are not more involved by now. Like Xavier Hutchinson, professional wide receiver, I don't think he's very good. Not as talented as Jaden Higgins. I thought by now Higgins would have beat him out, and it would be you'd have these two big guys, Higgins and Nico on the outside, and then Christian Kirk. I actually was drafting him, and I thought like he could possibly do pretty well playing the slot in that offense. The dude he gets hurt all the time, and unfortunately, like I just don't think like he's it. So you would figure like, okay, no, like let's get some speed, in the offense. Let him play the slot, kind of go with the younger guys, and have the offense be a little more dynamic. But I think these coaches. I've kind of given up hope with these young guys. I just don't think that it's going to happen. I think it's Nico and it's Schultz that are like the key guys that you can count on this week in starting.
There's been a lot of vitriol and venom spewed in the direction of Texans offensive coordinator Nick Caley, and a lot of that coming from fantasy owners as well. As we love to see Jalen Noel out there, and we're just not seeing it at this point. So I'm with you. I think it's Collins. I think it's Schultz. We are about 20 minutes away from kickoff of the Thursday night football game. I want to remind everybody, 20-minute warning, FFPC Thursday Weekly Challenge Live. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick 10 or 12 players if you want to play with kickers or defense or not. That's up to you. Win up to $2,500. If you want Brock Bowers on your team, you cannot have Jack Besh. If you want J.K. Dobbins on your team, you cannot have Cortland Sutton. 10, 30, and 100-team contests, only one player per NFL team. Register now at myffpc.com. I want to ask Nelson a couple of Patriots questions here involving TreVeyon Henderson in the backfield, involving Kayshon Boutte's hamstring. We'll also get into Jaden Daniels' injury, the Buccaneers receivers, and our Thursday night preview coming up. Is Tyler Lockett going to gum up the works for everybody in Las Vegas, including Michael Mayer? What do we do about Cortland Sutton tonight? Is he an automatic start, or is it more of a nuanced decision? He's Nelson Sousa, one of the co-hosts of the Fantasy Empire podcast on the Player Profiling Network. You check out all the work he is doing for high stakes fantasy football and everybody playing fantasy football over at ftnfantasy.com at @the_franchise12 on X. I'm Eric Balkman. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this with our Thursday night football preview here on Insider Access on the Better Sports Network.
Folks, let me talk to you about my favorite weekly platform to play on. We all play Dynasty and we all play Redraft, but we got to find some place to play weekly. And the FFPC Weekly Challenge is my favorite. If you're like me and you're tired of the constraints of salary caps or having to do a draft to make a team, or even having to play against these people that are stacking up the same team, stacking up certain games, and you feel like you have to put in 1 million entries or have to have those certain stacks to win, then come play over at FFPC. Really, the only main rule that you have to deal with is that you cannot select multiple players from the same team. I'm going out and I'm trying to find the best of the best of the best players and put them into a lineup. And that's what you can do over at myffpc. You can go out and you can take the number one running back in Bijan Robinson, and you can also have Saquon Barkley. As long as they're not in the same team, you can put them all into a lineup, right? And there's 4 flexes for this, so there's a lot of flexibility. There's 2 different contests, one that has kickers and defenses, one that's just position players. Then you also have a bunch of different price points you can play at: $35, $100, or $200 buy-in. And you're going out and you're just picking the absolute chalk plays, maybe sneaking in a little bit of a sleeper there, somebody that you think can really blow up that week. And that's how it works. It's one of the best contests out there for the sharpest gamers. And when you win on the FFPC, people take notice. That is where the best high stakes games are. That's where the best experts play. And that's where I play, because I want to be an FFPC champion and put that title on me, put the money in my pocket and put that in my bio, FFPC champion. And the FFPC weekly contest is the best place to play during the season.
Welcome back to FFPC Insider Access here live on the Better Sports Network. My name is Eric Balkman from the FFPC. He is Nelson Sousa from FTN Fantasy and, of course, the Fantasy Empire podcast as well. So good to have him aboard tonight as we start breaking down this Raiders-Broncos game here on Thursday Night Football. As a reminder, 17 minutes to go. The FFPC Thursday Night Challenge, weekly challenge is live. No draft, no salary cap, just pick 10 players. Went up to $2,500 as Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm was just telling you. 10, 30, and 100 team contests, one player per NFL team. Register now. MyFFPC.com. That's MyFFPC.com. Let's break down the Raiders here first. I want to bring up the fact that Geno Smith, Nelson, sure looks a hell of a lot better when Brock Bowers is in the lineup than when he's not. When you look at rostering, two quarterbacks in high stakes leagues in the FFPC, so on and so forth. Should Geno Smith be one of those guys as long as Brock Bowers is healthy?
I have a hard time rostering him. I look at it as we're getting close to the playoffs at FFPC. And if I've got my quarterback past a bye week, I'm actually looking to the backup's got to be at least somewhat decent, but I'm looking to back up my starter with their backup so that it kind of guarantees me a starting QB in the fantasy playoffs once you can't make any more roster moves. Mm-hmm. I just look at Geno like he's the type of quarterback that 3 weeks from now, like he might not even be the starter.
It's true. And something that we'll be looking at here. The other thing, God, do I have that? Yeah, we'll get into this in a little bit. The cronyism, the potential cronyism that could be going on in Las Vegas right now. Ashton Jeanty, we have to bring this up. He has, I think by and large, has not lived up to the hype. And I don't necessarily think it's all his fault. I think that if the Raiders make a concerted effort to maybe sign an offensive lineman or maybe draft an offensive lineman early, in this year's draft, we could see a much different Ashton Jeanty. He's like top 3 or top 5 in most missed tackles forced this season. He's been unbelievable, Nelson. He just hasn't had the lanes to rush through, and I think that's kind of what's holding him back. Maybe you have a different take. Is there anything else that you see that is preventing Ashton Jeanty from living up to this, first round redraft, second round redraft hype that we saw during drafting season this year?
I think part of it is that he just doesn't have the lanes. Like when you watch the Colts and Jonathan Taylor, the lanes that he runs through, and then you watch the Raiders, like there's a difference. Like the blocking is definitely elite with the Colts compared to the Raiders. So I think Jeanty, he needs a little bit of running room to get going, and then he could be that like home run guy and get chunks yardage. But at the same time, too, you got to wonder if, this is the NFL and you're not at Boise State. So, right. Could that be playing a role that, you're playing down in competition compared to now? So that could be a little bit of a struggle also from his rookie year.
We have to, I want to do this. Let's go to the chat right now. Mr. Bakes a lot, and Conrad, we're going to get to your question in a little bit. Mr. Bakes a lot, we were just talking about Geno Smith. This is open and shut for me. I'm starting JJ McCarthy at home against the Ravens over Geno Smith tonight in Denver. Nelson, do you concur?
Oh, that's that's not even a lineup call for me. Like Geno never enters the conversation. I'm not saying like McCarthy's like a world beater, but I'm going to go with McCarthy. And Geno could outdo him for sure, but I just think with McCarthy's running ability and everything, and like I said, like Geno is like a Jekyll and Hyde type of QB. I just don't know what to expect from him. And even though the Broncos are down Surtain, it's still a pretty decent defense. So Geno's never touching my my starting lineup.
Yeah, I can't do it this week. I mean, I know Bowers is healthy, but you look at what, and I know it's a week-to-week game. Like you got to reevaluate everything after every week and know how things can be different. But The Lions were coming off their bye last week. They had a home game against J.J. McCarthy, who missed all this time. And the Lions lost that game. McCarthy ran for a touchdown to seal it. He also threw for another couple of touchdowns. There's something there. I really like McCarthy this year and going forward, quite frankly, as the Viking quarterback. So Jakobi Meyers, we mentioned this earlier, but we didn't necessarily talk about the Raiders fallout from this. Myers leaves the Raiders for the Jaguars. How big of a bump do you think Trey Tucker is going to get in production, knowing that he doesn't have to worry about Jakobi Meyers anymore catching passes in Las Vegas?
I think he's just a different receiver from Jakobi. So I look at it as like he might see a little bit of a bump. But I don't know if like it's like a huge bump. I don't, he's not that type of receiver that I think like commands like double-digit targets every game. And I don't think the Raiders look at him that way. He's more of a big play guy. So unfortunately, too, the guy that I liked was Jack Besh. And it was kind of interesting that they made him active after a while and left Thornton out, and Besh was playing. But then last week, coming off the bye, Besh didn't play, and Lockett was out there. And it's like, you know, Lockett is Carroll's boy. And even though like Lockett's not a guy that I'm recommending playing at all, I'm not interested in rostering him or anything, but he's just going to be a pain in the ass for these young rookies to, you know, develop at this point.
That's what worries me. Like this, and I was talking about cronyism earlier, but Pete Carroll was the head coach in Seattle for the best part of Tyler Lockett's NFL career, right? He was also the head coach in Seattle with Geno Smith there. And now you have this quarterback, receiver, head coach triumvirate reuniting. And one, you know, right after they signed Lockett, Besh is active. He doesn't get out there at all. And this is the perfect time to develop Jack Besh into something. And they're not, at least I'm of the opinion that I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to give Tyler Lockett all he can handle at the detriment of developing Besh. It reminds me of, and maybe this isn't the best analogy, Nelson, but when Aaron Rodgers kind of twisted the arm of Brian Gutekunst in Green Bay to get Randall Cobb back, the year after, or the year that they drafted, and this guy was a total bust. Rodgers from Clemson. I can't remember his first name. Armani, I want to say. I can't remember exactly, but he was a third-round pick out of Clemson. And
Amari Rodgers, right?
Amari Rodgers. There you go. And he basically did the same thing as Randall Cobb, but Cobb came aboard, and Rodgers never really got a chance to develop in Green Bay. Washed out of the league. I mean, I think he's playing UFL or CFL or whatever right now. And I don't think that happens with Besh. I mean, he's more of a pedigreed guy. But I think we have to delay our expectations on when Besh develops into a thing in fantasy football now because of Lockett. That's what makes me nervous about that.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, it's frustrating because like the Raiders are 2-6, right? You're not going anywhere, right? So it's like, okay, it's starting to look like a lost season, guys. Let's develop our young guys, but you got an older coach in Pete Carroll, and that's not what he's there to do, right? They hired him because it's like, okay, win now mentality. And genius move. Let's bring in 30-something-year-old Lockett and stunt the growth of our young guys. So it's frustrating, you know, what from a fantasy perspective and from just a pure football perspective. I just think that like sometimes like these organizations, they get stuck at being mediocre for so long for this reason, because they just never, they never like look at it as like, let's blow it up. Let's rebuild it, get some young guys and develop that way. You know, they're stubborn and look at it as like, you know, let's bring in veteran guys. And if we get to 500, you know, I guess that's good.
Flip it over to Lockett, too. Clearly, no contender was willing to sign him. he ends up going to the Raiders, which, I mean, maybe they were the only team. And if they're the only team, and they're probably going to play him as well, which is frustrating for us as fantasy owners to try to figure out what's going on with Jack Besh. Okay, we got to go back to the YouTube chat. There's a lot of questions in here for start sits. We're 8 minutes away from kickoff here from Denver. Conrad Voss, 6125 on YouTube. This is half point PPR. This is a flex question. Kamani Vidal, Christian Watson, Alec Pierce, or Dallas Goedert. Nelson, with this half point PPR, I think that I lean towards running back here, and I think it's Vidal over Watson, Pierce, and Goddard.
Yeah, I would go Vidal, and if whatever reason you don't like him, I think Goddard would be like the next guy that I could see, catching a touchdown on Monday night.
Or maybe multiple. You never know. Touchdowns on Monday Night Football. Mr. Bakes a lot. We were talking about Geno Smith. We already said McCarthy over Geno Smith. Okay, I forgot that. Yeah. Trevor Hinnigan on YouTube. Would you play Geno Smith over Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Fields this week? So if we look at these matchups, Geno Smith obviously tonight in Denver. Tua Tagovailoa is at home against Buffalo. And you have, who's the other one that he mentioned here? This was Justin Fields, who is at home against the Browns. I don't know, man. The Jets.
Can I ask Trevor, what did he do to? That's his options at quarterback. What happened here? Please tell me that you have
he didn't draft
Dak or Mahomes.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Could be.
Yeah.
But I'll just say this to give my piece on Fields. He got the team's first win of he was a quarterback when the team won their first game of the year 2 weeks ago, coming off the bye. I know it's not the greatest matchup. I think he gets the start. There's always a possibility of benching, so I guess that kind of is a detriment a little bit. I think I lean towards Fields here, but maybe that's just pie in the sky analysis. What do you think, Nelson?
I lean Fields. Just don't watch the Jets game. Just put him in your lineup. Don't do yourself a favor because mentally it's rough. But I think Fields can figure out a way. If it's 4 points touchdown pass, I think with his rushing ability and everything, he can get you to 16 or 18 points. With Geno, I don't know if that happens tonight. I just don't have I don't have a strong opinion on Geno. So, and then Tua, again, these quarterbacks, you just don't know what you're going to get out of them. Tua lights up the Falcons 2 weeks ago, right? I think he threw for 4 touchdowns in that game. And then look at what he did this past week. I will say though, with Tua, he was moving the ball. The offense was moving the ball. So I actually might lean Tua actually in this one. It's between Tua and Fields. I think you leave Geno alone tonight.
I'm still going to say Fields, but I agree. It is close between Fields and Tagovailoa, but that's hopefully we helped you out on that. I have to get to not Dallas 3084 because this is a fun one here, and it's got to be one we decide in the next 3+ minutes. He says, I got Cortland Sutton and Nico Collins. I'm thinking about benching Nico Collins for Cortland Sutton since Davis Mills will be Collins' quarterback and Sutton has the Raiders, which is a great matchup. Listen, I get it. You make perfect sense in theory here on this, but it's going to be really, really difficult for me to say Nico Collins against the Jaguars is going to be on my bench over Sutton against the Raiders. I'm still playing Collins over Sutton here, Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, man, I don't mind Sutton, but he's come up small. I want to say 3 of the last 4 weeks hasn't been all that great. And Nico basically was I look at it as part of my process when I go through starting lineups, I don't get cute with my first and second round picks. I just play them because I look at it. I can't do it. So I just put those guys in the lineup because they were first or second round picks for a reason. Nico, was going as high as he was for a reason. He's capable when you least expect it to put up a 30-point game. And I just look at it as like he's got more upside than Sutton. I feel like, Sutton's biggest game this year was 23 points in week 3. And, Nico at any point, like he can erupt, and against Jacksonville, like there's nothing scary about that, like for me. And I think Davis Mills can get him the ball. Like I said earlier in the show, I don't think Mills is like not capable of moving the offense. So I'm just playing Nico in that case. If that's the call between Nico and Sutton.
Yeah, I think that's the way I would lean as well. Tom Smith, 13. This isn't necessarily tonight, but we'll answer it as well. Theo Johnson or Luke Musgrave. I'm of the opinion, and Nelson, like I'm a Packers guy, but I just for fantasy, I can't trust anybody on any given week in that offense. Theo Johnson is probably the number 2, arguably the number 1 option in many regards in New York for Jackson Dart. I have much more faith in Theo Johnson's floor than Luke Musgrave's floor.
I actually might be the opposite with you on this one.
Tell me Musgrave. Let's go.
I think I'm going Musgrave, and part of it is being a little biased too, because I have a ton of Musgrave now as of last night, and partly to do with the fact that Tucker Kraft was my most owned tight end this year. So that one hurt, but I believe that Musgrave is pretty talented in his own right. And I think that based on this offense and based on the receivers that I think they're just kind of whatever out there. They don't command targets. There's no like target monster. I could see Musgrave, having a decent game against the Eagles, because I actually think that the Packers receivers are going to have a tough time with those corners.
That could be, and certainly there could be some check down opportunities. There is some stuff that Musgrave is able to do in this Packers offense that Tucker Kraft was not able to do. And Musgrave, remember, just a few short years ago, tested head and shoulders athletically better than Tucker Kraft too. So there is that regard to analyze sort of. We're going to learn a lot about Musgrave on Monday night against Philly. Let's go to, let's see, who do I want to go to next? Marty. Marty SO429, Troy Franklin tonight hosting the Raiders, or DK Metcalf, who's going to be going up against the Chargers in Los Angeles. I'm a weak man, Nelson. I'm still playing Metcalf.
I play DK.
Yeah. Okay. Metcalf is the guy that we're going to go with there. All right. Now, let's go to let's talk about the running backs, J.K. Dobbins and RJ Harvey here tonight. I am playing RJ Harvey as a flex in one of my leagues in the KFFSC, Nelson. I feel okay about it, especially if the game script goes the way I think it's going to go with Denver controlling this game. I think we could, and Harvey's already, regardless of game script, he's already kind of, he had an uptick in routes run, in targets, in snap rate last week. He keeps getting more and more involved in this offense. Now I'm still playing Dobbins in probably like a half dozen, maybe more than a half dozen leagues. So I still like him tonight. But when you think about Dobbins versus Harvey, we talked about Monangai and Swift and how you could probably play both of these guys. Would you feel okay playing Dobbins? Again, not on the same team, but if you own Dobbins and Harvey on separate teams, do you think both of these guys, and I guess this is more of an RJ Harvey question, do you think he's still do you still think he has the ability to be flexed out in FFPC leagues this week?
Yeah, so what's happening with Harvey is I usually don't like playing running backs that are playing the amount of snaps that Harvey is. He's not playing like a heavy amount. But when he's in there, he's getting used, and he's getting used in the passing game, and he's finding the end zone. So against the Raiders, it's a great matchup. I don't mind using him as a flex. And then with Dobbins, I actually think that Dobbins has looked pretty good this year. And I think there's like nothing wrong with him. I think he's running well. He's just getting a bit unlucky where he's not getting the touchdowns, which kind of, just one touchdown in the game, propels him, to a 16 to 20 point scorer, as opposed to, what he's been doing where he's just getting just the yardage. So I'm comfortable playing both. I think it's a good matchup.
We are underway in Denver. Will Lutz has kicked it into the end zone. It is a touchback, and the Raiders and Geno Smith will take over from their own 35 as we kick off Fantasy Football Night in America. Your two-screen experience starts now. We will keep you abreast on everything going on in case you're only watching one screen. I want to ask you about Troy Franklin. I feel like we touched around him a little bit tonight, but this is a guy that continues to rise. This is a guy that continues to get more attention in this offense. Your thoughts on Troy Franklin and how you think he's going to finish his rookie season as we enter the second half of the NFL schedule?
Yeah, I think he's shown flashes where he could be like a back end. Like he's got the potential to be a back end wide receiver 2, maybe a consistent wide receiver 3. It's just right now it's not clicking 100% with him and Bo Nix. So like he gets 10 targets last week. So like the targets have been there. He gets a couple of deep throws, and I feel like Nix is just not throwing a very good deep ball this year. I feel like, from what I remember in college and even last year, his accuracy was a lot better with the deep balls. And I think right now, like, he's throwing like a flat, deep ball where he's got the arm strength, but he's just overthrowing guys. And it reminds me of like Lamar Jackson from like a couple of years ago, where he wasn't he had the arm, but he just wasn't throwing with accuracy. So if those connect, all of a sudden, like you're talking about Franklin, putting up some like pretty big, games. Because that's what he's capable of doing. So again, I have quite a bit of Franklin, so I'm definitely biased in the fact that I'm hoping for a breakout here in the second half of the year with Franklin. And I think at the very least, like he's a guy that you can put in your flex, due to bye weeks or whatever, like I did, and hopefully he doesn't goose egg me tonight, but I think he's got the potential in this offense to take off. It's just it hasn't like 100% clicked. You'd like to see consistency out of him.
And you're right, you do. Consistency is huge for any kind of receiver. I think what's been great about him has been his target share has gone up. His deep route completion percentage has gone up, and the Raiders play a lot of single high safety, so we could see a big night from Troy Franklin tonight, and I do think it continues as well. The Raiders are continuing this drive, pretty impressive so far. It was a Jeanty no gain up the middle on first down. Deontay Thornton catches a pass for 4 yards on second down. Tyler Lockett picks up the first down with a 6-yard catch from Geno Smith. Ashton Jeanty runs for 5 yards, and Geno Smith has picked up the second first down of the drive as he rushes for 6 yards. It is now 1st and 10 as the Raiders have entered Broncos territory at their own 44, 12:25 to go in the first quarter. Go ahead.
I think, Eric, sorry to interrupt you, but I actually think this is like good because for fantasy, I want to see the Raiders opening drive score a touchdown, because if you're heavily invested in Broncos players, you want this game to stay competitive or for the Raiders to be ahead, because then, there's more of a sense of urgency out of the Broncos.
I'm totally with you. We don't want this game getting away from either one of these teams early on. I mean, I have Jeanty and Trey Tucker going in, and Brock Bowers going in some leagues tonight too. So I do want to see this being a competitive game throughout tonight. Jeanty rushes up the middle for a 3-yard run on first down here. Because of some CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, T. Higgins issues, I was forced to start Pat Bryant tonight in one of my leagues. Nelson, I'm not proud of it, but I will share it with everybody tonight. Yeah, I know it's bad. It is bad. I don't want to ask you Pat Bryant tonight, but what do you make of his second half of the season? We talked about Troy Franklin. What do you make of Pat Bryant? Whether he can make a little bit of a run here and become a significant pass catcher in this offense? And then let's extrapolate that out going forward, too, when you consider that the Broncos have Sutton and Mims and Franklin, but they also have this guy named Pat Bryant who Michael Thomas was brought up by Sean Payton when he was talking about Pat Bryant after the draft. Is there something here with the Broncos and Bryant?
I think he's a talented kid, but I think we're a year away from him making a true impact. He needs an injury this year. Someone's got to go away for him to make an impact fantasy wise.
And the fact that you say, I mean, I have him in the league I had to start him in was a dynasty league. So there is that. I feel good about Bryant going forward here in 2026, at least 2025. I'm with you. I'm not expecting a whole lot. It is a false start on the Raiders. It is 11:05 to go in the first quarter. 2nd and 7 now from the Denver 41. Nelson, I want to go back to a couple of things we didn't get to talk about in the first segment now that we're off and running on Thursday Night Football. Let's talk about your Patriots here. TreVeyon Henderson, 14 carries for 55 yards in their Week 9 win over the Falcons. He also caught 4 balls for 32 yards. This was a game Ramondre Stevenson did not play because of a toe injury. I don't know if it's turf toe. I don't know if it's something less than turf toe. Maybe you have some insight into that. But Terrell Jennings definitely still figured into this. As we look forward here into this week with the Patriots, we know that they are taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Florida. Yeah. Your thoughts on TreVeyon Henderson this week with or without Ramondre Stevenson? I don't know if you can just break down the backfield, whether Stevenson plays or not. I think that would shed a whole lot of insight from a lot of the people watching right now.
Yeah, I don't think Stevenson plays. I think the turf toe injury is going to be a multiple week thing. And with Henderson, I liked that he was out there for like 70% of the snaps last week because I thought there was a chance that there'd be a little bit of shenanigans and we would see like Terrell Jennings like in a 50-50 timeshare where, us fantasy guys are losing our minds. Like, okay, everyone's gone now out of this backfield. Now it's Henderson. And here comes this undrafted dude from off the practice squad and is, getting a ton of work. But he got a bunch of work, but he was more in the 30% snap share. But when he was out there, he was getting the carries up the middle. And I think they probably, because he's a bigger back, he's like 6'1", 220. I think they prefer him at the goal line. The issue with Henderson this week is just the fact that Tampa Bay is pretty good against the run, really tough. So I don't have like high expectations of like what Henderson can do this week.
Yeah, I think that you have to go and exercise caution with this. If you are going to start Henderson as a flex, you have to be prepared to be hurt because that's kind of what the Patriots and Henderson have done for us most of the season on this. Just an update on the game real quick. It was 3rd and 3 for the Raiders. Geno Smith was sacked, for a loss of 5. However, the Raiders punted and downed it at Denver's 2. So the Broncos are taking over when we get back from break on Prime Video. 9:14 to go in the first quarter. The Broncos are going to have their first crack at it in a scoreless game. Sticking with New England, Kayshon Boutte, the latest update we have on him is that he did not practice again today with a hamstring injury. If you remember last week when Boutte was not on the field, it was Kyle Williams that was on the field. I don't know if there's anything here, maybe an uptick in Stephon Diggs, maybe an uptick in Hunter Henry. Is there anything else that we should be aware of if Boutte is not on the field this week, Nelson?
Yeah, so I think with Kyle Williams, I was high on him to begin the year, but what I noticed was when he got targeted, it seemed like him and May were not on the same page. So I think that the kid's talented, but I think it's still going to be a little bit of a struggle. They'll probably target him on a couple of deep shots in that game, and then it's just a matter of if he hits on those. But the sneaky guy and again, like this is dumpster diving, kind of like your Pat Bryant call. I actually think Mac Hollins is one of those guys that you could stick in your lineup, and I think like he could get it done for you and get you like those 10 points that you need if you're like truly desperate.
You know, it's funny you bring up Mac Hollins because in one of my KFFSC leagues, I needed a wide receiver, at least the potential for a wide receiver. In that league where you have to start 3 of them, I have Alec Iamaner on bye. I have Ricky Pearsall, who's hurt. I have George Pickens, who is on a bye. And I needed a third guy. I picked up Mac Hollins. I hope I don't have to play him. But I may have to this week.
Yeah.
Seemingly not. I think Darnell Mooney is going to play Sunday morning in London, which, by the way, 9:30 Eastern to everybody watching. Remember, we got an early kickoff over in Europe this week again on Sunday, so get him in. But I did pick up Hollins. We'll see. Maybe I'll take your advice and start him if I have to, because that league I am truly desperate in. The Buccaneers are truly desperate to get Chris Godwin back, and it doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon. In fact, while we were on the air tonight, or on the stream, I should say, Nelson, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN reported that the Buccaneers are, quote, thinking Chris Godwin could return later this month or in December. So he has not returned to practice. He was ruled out fairly early this week. This is a fibula injury after he was coming off that really bad ankle dislocation that we saw last I think it was a little over a month ago last year, sometime in like early October last year. The Buccaneers play the Saints on December 7th, and apparently that could be the week that Godwin's back. But that is 5 games away, and this is going to be tough if you want to stash Chris Godwin. I'm probably dropping him in one league this week just because I can't wait on this guy anymore. And even when he comes back, is there something to be said of like Godwin still helping players in the fantasy playoffs, and then, of course, in the FFPC main event and Big Gorilla Championship sprint from weeks 15 through 17?
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I've got Godwin. He was a fade for me this year, but I ended up getting him on a couple of teams through like free agency when he was dropped and stuff. I don't know what really to expect from him other than if he does come back, like he's going to be involved in offense. But yeah, he's a guy that I'm not really like having high expectations for, because it just sounds like really murky as far as like him being ready and maybe he's back late November, maybe December, like fibula. I don't know. It just doesn't sound all that good with him.
And I got to believe that at that point, Egbuka and Mayfield, who already are on like a different level as far as, connection, chemistry, you got to contend with that. Mike Evans is probably going to be back at that point too, especially if Tampa is in the playoff chase. So there's a lot of stuff working against Godwin at this point right now. The Broncos have started off their drive with a 6-yard carry for J.K. Dobbins, followed by a 2-yard run for J.K. Dobbins and a 1-yard run for J.K. Dobbins. Right now it is 4th and 1 from their own 11. The Broncos, I would assume, are punting, and they are punting right now. Back to the Raiders as we tick under 7.5 minutes to go in the first quarter here on Thursday Night Football. I want to talk about Darnell Mooney. I know you guys talked about this on the latest Fantasy Empire podcast from the Player Profiler Network. Get it anywhere you get your podcasts. It is Nelson Sousa, Chris Vaccaro, Matt Modica, and, of course, Dan Williamson. You guys were talking about this massive Drake London game. And Darnell Mooney in that same game, he only sees 2 targets. He catches one of them for 15 yards. Now, not only did he play second fiddle to Drake London, but fourth fiddle, really, because Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts were also catching balls well in front of him as well. He's averaging 2 catches a game this season. I think if you want to keep him around in certain deeper leagues, high-stakes leagues, I get it. But man, Mooney is done, right? I mean, there's nothing that we have seen so far this season in Atlanta that suggests that Mooney is going to be a difference maker the rest of the way, right?
No, it looks like it's more of a consolidated offense this year, and I think the emergence of Kyle Pitts has made that difference for Mooney, where he's not irrelevant, but he's not a guy that like you can comfortably just put in your lineup and expect him to do something. So yeah, I just think that like the focus is definitely London, Bijan, Pitts. It seems like they're not really looking to spread the ball around.
No, and it's easy, right? I mean, he's an easy bench, and quite frankly, if you're trying to load up on injury away type running backs, I think you can make the case that Mooney is not the better asset to roster on your team. You know, if you want to drop him for like Tank Bigsby or something like that, I think that makes a lot more sense than having Mooney on your team. Well, it was a shank for Jeremy Crawshaw, the Broncos punter. He kicks it out of bounds, and the Raiders take over at the Broncos 41. It is an Ashton Jeanty no-yard gain on first down, and then an incomplete pass to Brock Bowers. It sets up a pivotal 3rd and 10 now from the Broncos 41. It's a pass to Raheem Mostert, of all people, for 11 yards and a first down. 1st and 10 now for the Raiders at their own 30. And that is where we're going to take our final break of the evening. FFPC Weekly Challenge, Thursday one is closed. Don't forget about the Sunday one. Kicks off at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick 10 or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. Win up to $2,500, 10, 30, and 100-team contests available now. 1 player per NFL team. MyFFPC.com is where to go as Trey Tucker catches his first pass of the evening for 7 yards. I beg your pardon. It was a run for Trey Tucker as they are now down to the 23. We're going to give you exactly what's going on at Mile High when we come back. Plus, Nelson Sousa from FTN Fantasy is going to wax poetic on players like Alvin Kamara, Christian Watson, TJ Hawkinson, and more. You're watching FFPC Insider Access. Your start or sit questions answered right after this on the Better Sports Network with Nelson Sousa and Eric Balkman. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, let me talk to you about my favorite weekly platform to play on. You know, we all play Dynasty and we all play Redraft, but we got to find some place to play weekly. And the FFPC Weekly Challenge is my favorite. If you're like me and you're tired of the constraints of salary caps or having to do a draft to make a team, or even having to play against these people that are stacking up the same team, stacking up certain games, and you feel like you have to put in a million entries or have to have those certain stacks to win, then come play over at FFPC. Really, the only main rule that you have to deal with is that you cannot select multiple players from the same team. I'm going out and I'm trying to find the best of the best of the best players and put them into a lineup. And that's what you can do over at MyFFPC. You can go out and you can take the number 1 running back in Bijan Robinson, and you can also have Saquon Barkley. As long as they're not in the same team, you can put them all into a lineup, right? And there's 4 flexes for this, so there's a lot of flexibility. There's 2 different contests, one that has kickers and defenses, one that's just position players. Then you also have a bunch of different price points you can play at: $35, $100, or $200 buy-in, and you're going out and you're just picking the absolute chalk plays, maybe sneaking in a little bit of a sleeper there, somebody that you think can really blow up that week. And that's how it works. It's one of the best contests out there for the sharpest gamers. And when you win on the FFPC, people take notice. That is where the best high stakes games are. That's where the best experts play. And that's where I play, because I want to be an FFPC champion and put that title on me, put the money in my pocket and put that in my bio, FFPC champion. And the FFPC weekly contest is the best place to play during the season.
The FFPC Insider Access Show rolling on up until the 9 o'clock hour here tonight. I'm joined by Nelson Sousa tonight from FTN Fantasy. Of course, you hear and watch him on the Player Profiler Network on the Fantasy Empire Show with Matt Modica, Chris Vaccaro, and Dan Williamson at @the_franchise12 on X. FFPC Weekly Challenge, as Coop just pointed out. Don't forget, register for that now. MyFFPC.com. Went up to $2,500 this week in weekly FFPC action. Well, we have the unstoppable force versus the immovable object here. The Raiders in 29th in red zone efficiency versus the Broncos, who are the best team in the NFL in red zone efficiency. We just got an outcome on this. After the Raheem Mostert pass and Trey Tucker run, we had a Michael Mayer catch for 11 yards. We had an Ashton Jeanty run for 6 yards. We had another Michael Mayer catch for 2 yards, and then Ashton Jeanty from 4 yards out runs it in. The Daniel Carlson extra point is good. The Raiders have taken a lead over the Denver Broncos here, 3:02 to go in the first quarter, 7-0. And of course, Nelson, no catches for Brock Bowers. It's been the Michael Mayer and Ashton so far.
So Eric, if I can comment on this is what drives me crazy. So we all know how good Bowers is. We saw the game last week, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying that the dude needs to play every freaking snap of the game, okay? But they're inside the 10-yard line, and those last two plays, he was on the sideline.
And they scored, which is really frustrating.
Yeah, so one of them was a pass play. That's fine. Like, you want to put him on the sideline because it's going to be a run play. I don't need my freaking starting tight end run blocking. I don't give a shit about that from a fantasy perspective, right? But like that one play where they ran kind of like a little play action and it went to Mayer, like Brock was on the sidelines. And I'm like, So that's two plays in a row that your best weapon is on the sidelines. But I don't understand that inside the 10.
I think that, listen, maybe you have a different Brock Bowers experience than I have, but I feel like he has these games where it just seems like he's nowhere to be found. And then all of a sudden 2 drives, he has like 1 catch for 10 yards. And then 2 drives later, he's at like 7 for 80 and a touchdown. Like he's like a slugger in baseball where he just collects all these home runs in bunches. And I don't know if that's going to happen tonight, but it's certainly, from what you just said, that is frustrating to be in the red zone and have your best offensive weapon or maybe, for sure your top 2 offensive weapon on the sideline for plays that he excels at, plays that he can score at, as opposed to Michael Mayer. It's fantasy, man. Like we put up with it. It's maddening, but it is what it is. And hopefully there's going to be, the 7-0 game allows for more of an opportunity for Bowers, or several opportunities for Bowers from here on out. I want to get to some starter sit questions. I'll lead things off with running backs here. Nelson, we'll tackle them first. Would you rather play this week Travis Etienne against the Houston Texans, or would you play David Montgomery, who is also on the road against the fading Washington Commanders?
Yeah, I'm just going to play Montgomery there. And any other time I would play Etienne, but that's a tough matchup for Houston. And just a couple of weeks ago, they shut down McCaffrey. So what can we really expect from Etienne? Whereas like Montgomery, like what's Detroit favorite? They've got to be like double digits, right? Favorites?
I don't think it's quite that. I'm looking it up right now. The Lions are 7.5 point favorites in Washington.
Okay. All right. That's not bad. But I think you're going to see Detroit playing from ahead. It seems like it's that type of Montgomery game where you could sneak in the end zone. So I would play Montgomery.
Not that I'm arguing for Travis Etienne here, but I will bring this up. The Jaguars coming off their bye in week 9, we saw the most run-heavy approach from this offense all season, right? And it was successful. And now the Jaguars are going to have Jakobi Meyers, who's only been with the team for a few days. Probably no Brian Thomas. For sure no Travis Hunter. For sure no Brenton Strange. Is there something to be said about the volume working in Etienne's favor here?
There is, because coming off the bye, I think there was some speculation that Tootin would be a guy that would get more work and be more involved. And that necessarily, like, he got in the end zone, but like that wasn't the case. Like Etienne looked really good. So coming off that game, coming off the volume that he had, I feel comfortable with Etienne, but it's just a matter of like, are we spinning our wheels here against the Texans defense? Only because I think they're nasty.
And if that's the case, Montgomery not only has the higher floor, perhaps the higher ceiling as well, which is why you're going with Montgomery here. It is an RJ Harvey muffed catch at the goal line. He does return the kickoff out to the 20. Denver retains possession. It is a Cortland Sutton catch and run for 6 yards, followed by a Bo Nix sack at the hands of the Raiders here. 3rd and 13 from their own 17 for the Denver Broncos as we pass under the 3-minute mark in the first quarter. Kenneth,
I don't know what Nix is looking at. He he had the check down to Jeanty, Dobbins. So I don't know why he just didn't go there, but.
Is there something to be said, Nelson, for what do you make of the development? We didn't talk about Bo Nix a whole lot. What do you make of the development from Bo Nix so far? He's in his second season. We've seen a lot of good, but plays like this, you still like, God, but why can't he make this play?
Like I said, I think it's a little bit of a sophomore slump where, for fantasy wise, here's the thing: he's getting it done for fantasy. Right. But there's stretches in the game where you're looking and you're like, man, he doesn't look too good. Like that game against the Giants where they came back in historic fashion.
Yeah.
For 3 quarters, the Giants shut him down. He was doing nothing in that game. And then he ended up he was QB1 in fantasy that week where after 3 quarters, I think he was QB 28.
All the production came in the fourth quarter.
It did.
And listen, that happens from time to time, but it is pretty crazy to think about. It is an incomplete pass off the hands of Evan Engram on third down. The Broncos punted away, and it will be a return for the Raiders out to their own 43-yard line. However, there is a flag on the play. We'll see who this goes against. 91 seconds to go in the first quarter. Keeping it on the running back discussion here for starter sits. Kenneth Walker is at home against the Cardinals this week. Would you play him? And you mentioned Rachaad White earlier at home against the Patriots. White versus Walker, Nelson, who are you playing this week?
I play Walker. I just don't think that White has a good matchup, and I don't think it's that bad with the Cardinals. And Walker looked pretty good last week, so I go Walker easily.
How concerning is it for Charbonnet to be getting all these carries inside the 10, inside the 5 for Seattle if you are a Kenneth Walker owner?
It sucks. I was a Charbonnet guy, right? So I wasn't a Walker guy. And before the season, I had heard that was the case, that it was going to be more of a committee type of deal, and it wasn't going to be like it has been the last couple of years where when Walker's healthy, he's the one that's just getting everything. And then Charbonnet is, basically only when Walker's hurt is when Charbonnet becomes, fantasy relevant. So once I heard that Walker was going in the third round, I didn't have any interest in that. And I focused more on actually drafting Charbonnet. So it's frustrating. I don't think it's changing, even though the other thing too is Walker looks better, but also the way they're using Charbonnet, Charbonnet's a bigger dude and they're just running him up the middle on these dive plays. And whereas Walker, they're using him more, outside the tackles and using his speed.
I want to bring everybody up to speed here. It was a holding penalty on the Raiders, which is going to move them back. It's a spot foul. It moves them back to their own 22. So the Raiders taking over with 1:31 to go in the first quarter from their own 32, up 7-0. Nothing is kind of what we've been getting out of both Jordan Mason when Aaron Jones is active and Alvin Kamara. My God. I mean, just to see, I don't know. This is probably the sentimentalist in me talking, but it's so frustrating to see Alvin Kamara just be a shell of himself, going nowhere on a nowhere team right now. For anybody who is considering what they need to do at their flex spot, and it's coming down to a running back here, would you play Alvin Kamara in Carolina this week over Jordan Mason, who is going to be hosting the Baltimore Ravens, Nelson?
I don't really care for either guy, but I probably go Mason because I do think that Kamara, there's just nothing going on there. And that's what happens with these older dudes at running back. You reach a certain age, and when they fall off, they fall off a cliff, and it's steep. So that's what's happening. I just don't think Kamara is really playable.
He's a guy that I am I think I played Harvey over him tonight. And I feel okay about it. Certainly, I could still insert Kamara into my starting lineup on Sunday, but I made the command decision that I was for sure going to get Harvey in tonight, maybe at the expense of being having Kamara benched the following week. The Raiders drive is off to an Ashton Jeanty 10-yard run, and then Ashton Jeanty a 6-yard catch on 1st and 10 from Geno Smith. It is now 2nd and 4 with just under a minute to go in the first quarter. Let's move to wide receivers. I don't think we've talked Khalil Shakir at all tonight. Maybe we have. This tends to blur together on a 2-hour show. But Khalil Shakir tonight at Miami, Nelson, would you play him this weekend, Shakir, over the likes of Juwan Jennings, who I know we talked about earlier? Jennings for the 49ers is going to be at home against the Rams.
I go Shakir. And hope that in the game against Miami, if Buffalo, smokes them, that hopefully Shakir is part of the touchdown parade. With Jennings, like the Rams are just a tough defense. So I think that I would just go with Shakir, and with Buffalo's probably projected for a decent total in that game. So I would lean Shakir.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Shakir as well. I feel pretty good about it. The fact that Buffalo kind of sat on their hands as far as acquiring a receiver at the trade deadline. So I think that's good news for Khalil Shakir. It was bad news for Ashton Jeanty, who just ripped off a 32-yard run that was called back because of holding on one Jack Besh. So now it is 2nd and 12 from Vegas's own 30-yard line. Steve G chiming in. He looked today, and Devin Neal became one of his top-owned running backs. We were just talking about Kamara. I picked up Neal for cheap last week and in a couple of leagues this week. If Kamara is done, is there fantasy goodness to be mined from the Devin Neal shares here, Nelson?
I don't think so. Like earlier in the year, Kendre Miller was looking like pretty viable. I don't think Neal is as good as Kendre Miller, but I think it's one of those guys that you want to stash because you just never know what will happen over there. But being they're a low level offense. I don't think he has any standalone value. He's a direct handcuff. If Kamara goes away, then he could be very viable.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it too. Injury away type guy, no Kendre Miller, who's out for the season. Kamara, if he was to go down too, it is Neal, and that's pretty much it in that backfield. I'm sure Taysom Hill would find a way to muck it up a little bit at least, but that's just par for the course with the New Orleans offense. They've gone to the second quarter here with the Raiders taking a 7-0 lead and driving against the Denver Broncos. Let's talk about the Colts here. I think this is a fun one. You may or may not have these guys on the same team. But given what it cost you to draft them or pick them up, you might have Josh Downs and Alec Pierce on the same team. They are on the same team in real life, the Indianapolis Colts, who are hosting the Atlanta Falcons this week. Who is the better play in Week 10 lineups, Nelson Sousa? Is it Josh Downs or is it Alec Pierce?
I play Pierce. Pierce has looked good the last few weeks. He's getting a bunch of targets. So Atlanta's they're kind of tough. They're like sneaky good defensively, but if they pay more attention, like let's say AJ Terrell is like on Pittman, I could see where like Pierce is kind of like the go-to guy, but I think Downs will be involved. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with Pierce.
It's one of those things where I think you're right about the matchups. But it's one of those things where it's like it depends on kind of what fantasy player you are. Like if you're like all gas, no break, upside, then I think it's Pierce. But if you do want to play it a little bit like, well, listen, I don't need to really get a 30-point week here. I'm fine if I get 12 or 13. Then I think Downs might be the play. I think they're both fine against Atlanta this week. In a vacuum, if I have to pick one, I don't know. I guess I lean Pierce, but it's so close between these two guys. It's also, and I can't believe we haven't talked about this as we're 9 minutes away from the top of the hour here. Tom Smith chiming in on YouTube. who is the running back play for the New York Giants? Is it Tyrone Tracy or is it Devin Singletary? And Nelson, this was that kind of threw us a curveball last week as far as the Giants running backs go. We kind of thought it was going to be Tracy, like in the wake of the Cam Scadaboo injury. We saw how Tracy came on the second half of 2024, and it just seemed like a foregone conclusion that, hey, you're going to want to be playing Tyrone Tracy this week. And yet it was Devin Singletary that stepped up maybe more so in this. I lean towards Tracy again this week at the Bears, but I'm prepared to be hurt again, as it is with TreVeyon Henderson. I'm prepared to be hurt again if Singletary ends up being the guy here. How do you weigh in on this Giants running back debacle?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. Tracy only got 5 carries in that game. I think Singletary had more, outsnapped him. It's a good matchup against Chicago. I'm always going to lean Tracy if both guys are healthy. But I don't feel as strong about starting Tracy as I did a week ago. Like I felt more comfortable starting him last week. And then after seeing that, I was like, oof, okay. Like he's not an auto start, possibly. A little too much Singletary.
Yeah, that's the thing too. And like I know like Singletary is a guy that like coaches love, right? We've heard this, for quite frankly years. And we know Daboll and Singletary have their relationship from Buffalo when Daboll was coaching there and Singletary was playing there. So I think there's something to be said for that. But yeah, I think it's Tracy, but if Singletary ends up being the guy again this week, it's not going to surprise me at all. The holding penalty eventually kills the drive here for the Raiders. After that holding penalty on Jack Bash, it's an incomplete pass on about a 4-yard out to Brock Bowers. And then Geno Smith gets sacked by Nick Bonito the next play. They will be punting it here from their own 24. It is 4th and 18 for the Raiders as they lead 7-0, 14:46 to go in the first quarter. We were just talking. I feel like this is the Bears Giants episode tonight because everything seems to be coming back to the either the Giants or the Bears. We're just talking about the backfield. What about Darius Slayton, a player that I know Evan Silva was big on in the pre-draft process, and obviously opportunity has opened up with injuries to Cam Scadaboo and Malik Neighbors on this team. They're going up against the Bears this week. Christian Watson is playing on Monday Night Football in Lambeau Field against the Eagles. Nelson, if you can only play one of these guys, if you had to play one of these guys, would it be Darius Slayton against the Bears or Christian Watson against the Eagles in Week 10?
On paper, it's Slayton, just because I think it's a better matchup for him. But in terms of like the receiver, I just think Watson's that big play guy where he could get behind the Philly defense and make a play. I haven't seen that out of Slayton to this point. Like, I think he's like, if you want a floor this week and you're not worried about upside, you just want to score some points in your lineup, Slayton's the play.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a dog this week, then I play Watson.
With regards to Watson and this Kraft injury, and I know we touched on it with Musgrave earlier, I don't necessarily see the correlation between extra targets for Watson now that Kraft is hurt. Am I wrong in that? I mean, I just feel like they're more complementary players rather than, players that are counted on to do similar things. If anything, the Kraft injury should open up stuff for Musgrave and like players like Romeo Doubs, not necessarily Watson or Matthew Golden if he even plays. These guys are field flippers. They're field stretchers with Watson and Golden. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but I don't necessarily see this boon of targets going to Watson now that Kraft is done.
You summed it up well. I agree with you. I don't really have anything to add because that's the same. I have the same thought process.
Speaking of tight ends, let's move on to that position. Hunter Henry for the New England Patriots. He is going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Florida this week. We also have Theo Johnson, who I know we talked about earlier. He's going up against the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. If you can only play one, and I feel like I've been burned by Hunter Henry more often than I've cashed on him this year. It seems like the weeks I start him, he does nothing. And the weeks I bench him, he comes up with 2 touchdowns. So I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss. Maybe you can shed some insight on what Henry's going to do this weekend, Nelson.
I think it's whoever scores a touchdown out of these guys, and that's who's going to outscore who. I actually think they're very similar players. They're going to get their 4 to 6 targets in the game, and then it's whoever catches the touchdown. So I'm okay flipping a coin in this case and to decide like who to start. I don't have a strong opinion on this one.
Yeah, I think I go Theo Johnson, but like you said, who the heck knows on this one? What about these 2 tight ends here, Mark Andrews and Cade Otton? Andrews, who is slowly being usurped by Isaiah Likely in the analytics and as far as the underlying numbers go, he is going up against the Vikings this week. And then Cade Otton, who obviously is in the beneficial position of not having to worry about Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. We saw him excel when he was thrust in this position last year without these receivers. However, Emeka Egbuka is there against the Patriots this week. Andrews versus Cade Otton. Who is the better play in FFPC tight end premium leagues in week 10?
I go Cade Otton. I think with Tampa Bay, you have New England secondary that can be kind of tough a little bit. And I think that Cade Otton is going to be the safety valve for Baker in that game. So I lean Otton.
The punt was kind of interesting from the Raiders. A.J. Cole bobbles it, sort of fumbles it, still gets the punt away on 4th and 18, and he kicks it 43 yards. It goes out of bounds to Denver's 33, and they take over there. Bo Nix throws an incomplete pass to RJ Harvey, but there's holding on the seemingly ageless Mercedes Lewis, who was elevated to the active roster tonight. So then it goes 2nd and 10. It's an RJ Harvey run for 4 yards. Now 2nd and 16 for the Broncos from their own 27 as we move on and talk about one more tight end discussion. And I think this is interesting tonight based on the Harold Fannin news that we saw. Full practice yesterday, Nelson. He gets no practice today, or limited practice, I think is what it was. I can't remember. It was either limited or none with a
no practice, I believe.
No practice. Okay, so no practice for Fannin. Does this make David Njoku this slam dunk play over TJ Hawkinson against the Ravens this week?
Yeah, I do. It's never a good thing when you're this late in the week and you get a downgrade with in the practice report with no practice. So hamstring, no bueno. I think you need to make other plans. If you have Fannin right now in your lineup, I think there's a good chance he doesn't play. And if you have Njoku, I think that it's a good play to put him in.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that for sure on this. The Broncos threw an incomplete pass. Bo Nix threw an incomplete pass on 2nd and 16 to Cortland Sutton. On 3rd down, Nix does connect with Troy Franklin for 13 yards. Denver now facing a 4th and 3 at their own 40. The offense is not going anywhere. It appears that they are going for this as time ticks down. Less than 13 minutes to go in the second quarter. The Raiders get in a late sub because the Broncos also substituted. And now we are going to see I don't know what's going on here. If this is a reset of the play.
They're trying to draw them off sides.
Is that what it is, that they're trying to draw them off? Okay. So the play clock's ticking down here under 15 seconds. I think you're right. And that's what's going on. They take the delay of game. 4th and 8 now from Denver's own 35. It appears that they're going to be punting. Quarterbacks. If you told me I was going to be talking about Sam Darnold versus Matthew Stafford in week 10 of the season before the 2025 campaign started, I would have said you're crazy. And yet here we are, fantasy owners in the FFPC facing this right now. Nelson, Matthew Stafford at San Francisco this week, Sam Darnold at home against the Cardinals. Very possibly could somebody have waited on quarterback, drafted both of these guys, and facing a really tough decision this week, Stafford versus Darnold. I like both of them. If I have to pick one, I probably lean towards Stafford, but maybe you can sell me on Darnold, or maybe you're with me on Stafford.
I'm with you on Stafford. I like both of them. I think Darnold's a fine play this week. He gets his boy Shaheed. into a new weapon into the offense. So it feels kind of exciting to, want to play Darnold with his new weapon. But I think I go Stafford. You got, as long as Puka is healthy, he's active, I expect them to be able to do whatever they want against San Fran. I think that defense is a little decimated right now. So, and Stafford's just been awesome. He's on a little bit of a heater.
And he gets hopefully a healthy Nakua, who was limited in practice yesterday. I have not seen the practice reports yet today, but he was limited yesterday with that chest injury. Jeremy Crawshaw having a weird night. I don't know what the heck kind of punt that was. But in any event, it goes 36 yards down to the Raiders 29. The Raiders take over, 11:59 to go in the second quarter. They are up 7-0 here. I think I'm going to wrap it up at that because we got to get out of here, Nelson. I want to give the viewers, the listeners, everybody watching and listening to this, an opportunity for you to tell them everything that you're working on for FTN Fantasy this year.
Yeah, so with FTN, it starts, during the draft season. I've got my, rankings and cheat sheet. I do a bunch of, live stream drafts, talk about roster construction. But right now during the season, it's my waiver wire article, where it's geared towards fab leagues that has blind bidding, where I give out, recommendations. I'm in the Discord chat. So we got a private Discord channel where I answer, trade questions, lineup questions, pickups, whatever it is. I'm available 24/7. So that keeps me busy.
I would assume it would. And for everything that Nelson is doing, FTNFantasy.com is where to go, FTNFantasy.com. Remember, you can always hear him weekly on the Fantasy Empire podcast with Dan Williamson, Chris Vaccaro, and Matt Modica on the Player Profiler Podcast Network. Connect with him on the X at @the_franchise12. The 2016 FFPC main event co-champion and a guy who knows a ton about high-stakes fantasy football. Always appreciate you coming on, Nelson. Enjoy our discussions as well. Enjoy the rest of Week 10. Enjoy the game tonight, man. Thanks so much for making me and this show and all the viewers a part of your Thursday evening.
I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. That is Nelson Sousa. Remember to play the FFPC Weekly Challenge, myffpc.com. Plenty of time to win $2,500 or more, 10, 30, and 100-team contest. No draft, no salary cap, just fun. myffpc.com. I want to thank Nelson Sousa, our producer, Sean Engel, tonight. I also want to remind you, we will be back at 7 o'clock next Thursday with the Jets and Nelson's Patriots on Thursday Night Football. Casey Kasem from Rotoballer joins me for 2 full hours. It's going to be a lot of fun. For Sean Engel, for Nelson Sousa, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access live on the Better Sports Network. Enjoy the rest of the game, everybody.